Hi, welcome to Choosing Your Camera. It's one of our first assignments in this class, and I'm recording some instructions for you, and I wanted to kind of take you through not really the requirements of the assignment, but to take you, maybe guide you rather, through some of the steps to finding a camera. And for those of you who have a camera, finding out whether or not your camera works for this class. So if you've read the syllabus and you've read the course description, you know that it's perfectly fine for you to use your phone. That's totally okay. The problem with using your phone is that a lot of the settings and controls that we're using to help us understand how to actually take photographs and do it in a way that we have control over all the variables, you don't really see everything up front. Every camera, as you'll find out through this class, is built on the physics of optics and how light works. And then everything beyond that kind of becomes more about how does it get printed, how does it get observed, how do we record the image, whether or not we record the image, all of those little things. So because we're dealing primarily with digital photography, I do go over some of the more historical processes because they're awesome and you should know them. But also just to kind of remind folks that a camera is just simply a machine and it's letting light do what it does, right? It's just creating a circumstance or a set of circumstances so that we're controlling things in a way that we get an image. So that's part of the fun. I won't spoil any of that right now, but let me kind of take you down the path of how to look for your camera, how to maybe find your manual, and then figure out whether or not your camera will work for the class. In this assignment, I have asked you to let me know what model you have. That's not because I memorize every single model or manufacturer's manual. It's because it gives me an idea of what you're working with and what might be compatible. I am not one of those early adopters. So as far as like cell phones go, I typically have maybe a generation or two behind. I only update when the lenses and the photography kind of warrant it or when my phone dies. So I would love to upgrade every time there's a new one, but frankly, I don't think that's actually necessary. That's the other thing that you'll see in this term is that I definitely am a gearhead when it comes to certain areas of my life. Don't get me talking about running shoes. But I also realize and have been there where, funds are limited and there's only so much that, you can do with what you have. So it really isn't about the camera so much as it is about how you understand how to use your camera and then how you use it, right? So I put the emphasis on this part and this part of our image making skills, not necessarily the camera. All right, let me share my screen. All right, so there's a few places that you could take yourself that would give you some good information on what kind of camera you need, or if you have a camera that you already are going to be using or planning to use, whether or not that has everything that you need in that. So the thing that we really want to look at is manual exposure controls, and we'll look at digital camera. The comma, when you're searching, some of you already know this, will be a yes and kind of search. So manual exposure controls and digital camera, those things need to be met. This gives me some sponsored shopping information. As you can see, Leica, yeah, Leica's awesome. Anybody have $1,400 to just pop out for that? No, I don't think so. Not many of us. So you can kind of scroll down, and what you're looking for at this point in your search is, are there locations that I can go that look like they're less about the sales and maybe they're more about the reviews or more about the user information. So Digital Photography School is actually a really nice place to go. There's a lot of good information here for anything through the course. Digital Camera World is a pretty good one. Quora, yeah, avoid Quora. And some of these others that are like, again, shopping, going to, as you know, like as you go down, there's just like a little bit less of a algorithm hit. I don't see any down here that are helpful. Okay, so let's go through this. Digital camera world. Okay, manual exposure mode. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, usually, let me pull your attention to this area right here where my cursor is. See that M right there? That tells you that there's a manual exposure mode in your camera. A manual exposure mode means that you have control over your shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture. Now, the degree to which you have control is going to be controlled by the actual camera itself. So the cheaper the camera, typically what happens is that shutter speeds can be really fast and really slow. That doesn't cost the manufacturer anything by way of supplies or mechanics or anything like that. The aperture, on the other hand, if you see these little icons here, this is your lens, and this is the opening of your lens, whether or not it can open really wide or whether or not it can go really tiny, right? So the aperture, this is actually a circle maker that broke because it fell, but you can kind of see that these little leaves right here, when it was working, I could open it and shut it, and it would create a circle. This is a lot like an aperture. It's like the pupil of your eye. And so the aperture is a little more expensive for manufacturers to control on the camera because they actually have to build in the mechanics. So sometimes what happens is that when you buy a kit camera, something that comes with like a case and all the other goodies, you'll get a camera that has a great shutter speed, a lot of latitude with the ISO, but the aperture is maybe limited to like a 4.5 or a 3.5. If you're a beginner, that is not a bad deal. If you can afford that camera and it fits and it's big enough that you enjoy it, but not so big that you can't use it, absolutely, that's the right camera for you. Right now, what you're worried about is, can you actually put to use and practice the things that we're going to be learning in the class? Now, if you're using your phone, let me get to it. You can use Pocket Light Meter. Pocket Light Meter is a way of, just ignore the mess. It's so messy right now in my studio. I had a friend stay over for my birthday weekend and they used my studio as their place. And so I still have like the cot and thing. And so here, never mind, you don't need to know all that. So what, oops. Skip. So what you get with the Pocket Light Meter is you get the shutter speed that you can set. You've got the f-stop, and then you've got the ISO. And what it tells you is whether or not you're exposed correctly. So you can use your finger and the touch screen to both take a meter reading, but then also set your controls manually. Now, normally people don't use manual exposure control because they don't need to. Their camera does everything for them. Your cell phone, if you probably have noticed, when you touch an area, whether it's the white door behind me or the green wall or the gray curtain or the green curtain, the light overall in that image changes a little bit, right? Not only will it focus, but it also changes the brightness or the darkness of the image. At some point, there's areas that are too dark and there's no detail. At some point, there's areas that are too light and there's no detail. Those are the things that you want to avoid, right? When we're controlling our camera manually, we get to choose how white does that door look like, right? How dark are my shadows? Does that gray look gray? Or does it look black, or does it look white, right? So we have a lot more control. Is my face the appropriate brightness? Is my hair the appropriate brightness? So these are all things that we want to control because it gives us creative control over our images, and that's what we're here for. All right, so let's get back to searching. All right, so this is kind of a nice place to go if you have questions. What I'm going to look for now, since I really didn't get what I wanted, I'm going to look for best beginner manual digital cameras. Okay, best camera for beginners 2023, digital camera world. Okay, let's look at that. All right, the best camera for beginners will be easy to use, but with the extra scope of interchangeable lenses and manual control. That is true to a certain extent. You may not need interchangeable lenses. That will keep you happy with your camera a little bit longer. It also lets you upgrade your camera, but we'll get into that a little bit later. All right, so DSLR versus mirrorless cameras. Kind of the same thing, except mirrorless cameras are a little bit lighter. They're also a little bit more compact. So if you're someone who likes to hike, or you like to keep your camera with you and you want to keep it away in a small bag, you don't want to carry a bunch of stuff, or if mobility or weight is an issue for your body, a mirrorless camera might be a better option. You could also use a compact camera, which doesn't have a mirror, and it also doesn't have the mirrorless camera capability. It's more of like a pocket size camera, but it may have manual exposure controls. And so those are, you gotta have to dig for those a little bit more. All right, so the Olympus Mark IV. The cameras are small, the lenses are small. It looks very retro, which is lovely. It's close to my heart. What you're looking for here, okay, all of these things right now in this era of digital photography in 2023, and you know, probably I'll record this again in another year, so it'll be relatively recent. Megapixels resolution, not typically a problem. Most cameras have decent resolution. Resolution at this point, the best way to describe it would be it controls how big and how detailed your images could be printed and viewed. So if you're going to print them in person or to be seen in person, megapixels is the thing to worry about. Not that much at this point, unless you're going to be printing really, really large, in which case, you know, you're probably going to know a little bit more about your camera, or at least you should before you spend that money. All right. You will see there's the plastic build. That's plastic? Okay, that's good to know. If it drops, it could break. Canon Rebel. Okay, so Canon Rebels tend to be a pretty awesome workhorse. The other benefit of a Canon Rebel is that at Sylvania campus, we have lenses for folks to check out. We have a couple of macro lenses, a wide angle, and I think we have some lens babies, and they're all specifically made for Canon cameras. So if you were to check out a lens to put on your Canon, awesome. We also have quite a few of the Canon EOS Rebels for students to check out. It is first come, first serve, and it's not for the whole term. It's just for about a week or so. But for some of you, that might be the best way to try out an SLR camera and see if you like it. All right. All of these, I believe, because of our search, they all actually have manual exposure controls. The next one that they recommend is going to be the Nikon Z50. Oh, I see. The Nikon ZFC, but the Nikon Z50 does the same for less money. That's always nice. Limited lens range. That's fine. I'm reading through this. So sometimes you need to worry about if you're going to be sticking with a camera, you want something that actually has a pretty universal thread mount so that you can screw on a lens and have a lot of options, because the best way to upgrade your camera is to just get a new lens for it. So if the body is solid and you're happy with that performance, the lens can really improve your images. So for those of you who want to continue photography, maybe going with something that's been around a little bit longer, like different, you know, iterations of it, might be a better idea. The Nikon D3500, good resolution. There's video for those of you who like video. There's no tilt or touch screen for the LCD, so it does take you a little bit longer to navigate. Fujifilm Fuji's had some really great luck with the mirrorless cameras. The mount is a Sony E, which is relatively universal. Three-way tilting, haven't used that. Fuji kit lenses, 18 to 15 millimeter. 2.8 is actually relatively fast. That'll give you some latitude, meaning like some broad range for your exposures. So this is a good example right here. The Sony a6000. Sony has been around for a long time. Their mirrorless cameras are tried and true. I have one myself. I actually have two myself, two different generations and different versions. They're wonderful. Their resale value is pretty good. And their lenses are getting better and better as far as how universal they are. And you can take one off of your, new one and put it on an old one or vice versa. The megapixels for this are pretty good, and there's no video. So if you don't care about video, I don't care about video right now, then this might be the best way to spend your money because you don't pay for anything that you're not going to use. So do be careful about that. There could be something here that either you go to like Shutterbug or one of those places and they're trying to sell you a camera. If you don't care about video or your camera on your phone does a better job, which for most of us it does, then don't buy a camera for the video. If it's got it, great, no big deal. Don't wait around for one not to have it, but definitely don't buy it for that. So if you feel like you're paying a lot for a basic camera that has like really badass video stuff and you're like, I'm not a video person, then maybe look at a different camera. Okay, so let's see this. Let's take a look. The review for the 6000. So one of the things I really like about this, and this Alpha series is really great. It's a really good resolution, 24 megapixel image sensor is good. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, it does have an interchangeable lens, meaning you can change out that lens and upgrade it or change the view or the focal length and things like that. If you put a really big lens though on a very tiny camera, it does feel a little weird. Just heads up on that one. Yeah, the handling poor with larger lenses, that's just literally the handling when you're holding it. It's very top heavy. The high ISO, ultimately, like you're not going to be shooting at high ISO anyway. We're going to learn how to take longer exposures and use other means by, to control our exposure. So things like this are really, important. Let's see what the cost is. So we've got $574 at Walmart, $649 at Best Buy, $813 at Amazon. Let me show you something else. What about if you go Sony a6000, Command N, and what if I go to a used place like KEH is a used and a guaranteed certified seller. So if you don't care about getting something that's older, you could actually buy yourself a pretty decent camera and buy it used. So if I was going to look at the Sony a7 II, this is one of the ones that I have. So battery, AC adapter, micro USB cable, $719.97. That's not bad, but it's only $100 less than I bought mine for. So you could probably find a better deal on a different Sony. What if you did manual exposure control digital camera? So you could do these general searches on a used site like K. The NEX7 camera body black. Let's see, there's the Fujifilm. Let's look at the Fuji. Okay, it's excellent. excuse me. There's no lens with this, so do be aware of that. Here we go. So you're going to look at the key features or the specs. ISO sensitivity, autofocus, and then you would need to buy a lens. So the problem with looking piece by piece is that when you're already not sure what you're looking for, that can be kind of tough. You can also go to places like Best Buy and see if they have any deals. Digital cameras. All right, so mirrorless cameras. You can see the price range is pretty jumpy. You've got the Panasonic Lumix. That's actually not a bad camera. The Panasonic Lumix here. You've got more Panasonic. A lot of these prices are, here we go, 50mm retractable lens. Curious, how would I find out if a camera that I'm looking for actually has manual exposure controls? So if I just click on the PowerShot, I know that some of the point and shoots have manual controls. Ooh, let's look at this cute one. Oh, is this one sold out? Okay, it's cute. So how do I find this? Okay, so I could, it's not going to give me information on that one. All right, how do I find out specs? Highly rated, reviews. I don't really have anything on here, right? So you definitely want to find out, like, does this camera have what I need? So if, say I like the price, I'm going to copy the name. I'm going to do Command N on my Mac to see what are the specs. Canon PowerShot. Okay, B&H Photo is another good place to go. They do sell used stuff and they do get a little bit more techie and nerdy with the information. Here we go. Optical zoom, that means they're using the lens. Video, okay, whatever. 20 megapixel, great. Point and shoot. Okay, so I get more details here. Built-in Wi-Fi, that's kind of nice. User manual. Okay. What you're going to look for is exposure. Turn the camera out, camera basics. Auto mode, hybrid auto mode. Okay. Other shooting modes. P mode. Let's program. TV, AV, and M mode. Here we go. This tells you that there are manual exposure controls. There are also time priority and aperture priority. So let's zoom in and see. Maybe button. Can we see? Aha. So there's manual focus, exposure compensation. hybrid, playback, TV, AV, and M mode. Advanced guide. So it's not easy to find, but what you're going to want to look for is that M mode. There we go. Okay, this is nice. It's interactive. So when you set your camera in M mode, what that means is both your aperture and your shutter speed can be set by you. It gives you the ability to make horrible images. It also gives you the ability to make really great images that maybe your light meter is telling you are not properly exposed, but you want them to look that way. So for instance, this particular camera, the Canon PowerShot SX740 digital camera, is actually going to work for you for this class. So this would be something that you could then copy this if you didn't want to buy it from B&H, and you could just search the internet and see who else is selling this. It's $400. There's one that's refurbished. If it's refurbished by the manufacturer, it would be a pretty safe bet, especially if it comes with a guarantee. Do not buy anything off of Craigslist, eBay, or from somebody on the street unless you know exactly what you're doing, or like a car, you get it checked out by someone who does. You may get lucky, but it is really hard to tell whether or not a digital camera works well or won't have issues just by using it once. And especially it's a red flag if people are like, oh, I don't have the battery. So if you can't use it at all, like, don't buy it, please. Again, refurbished is fine, used is fine. Only buy what you can have guaranteed and where there's a warranty, and so you don't get taken or scammed. The other thing would be if it is refurbished, make sure it's coming from the manufacturer, because they're the only ones that will actually guarantee that. And then also make sure that you're not totally busting your budget. If you don't know what you want and you have a chance to check out one of our cameras first, that would be the best way to go. That would be what I recommend. You're going to have to make sure that you get a hold of Tatiana early week 2 in the class. So I'm hoping that you'll have a little bit more information to share with the class and talk to each other about, you know, what it is that you're looking for, whether or not you actually have a camera that works, if you ran into a dead end with some of the research, and whether or not you found the manual. So trying to turn this assignment from yes, I'm here, check the box kind of thing to more of getting everybody off on the right foot, okay? And if you do have problems, definitely don't hide that. Let us know, because that's how I'm going to be able to reach out and find out how to help you. All right. Thank you for going through this with me, and I'll talk to you soon.